Hi everyone, and welcome to the Today Falco community call. I am Leonardo Grasso and I am MC this call. I want to inform you that this call is recorded, so if you don't want to be recorded, please drop off. Also, please, I want to invite you to fill the Who Joined section of the community. Okay, let's start with these week highlights. The first one is we moved the new event generator to the Falco organization. Let me just show you a quick introduction to it. Basically, this is Go tools that re-implement the sum function of the old event generator, but with some more usability features and also with more extendability features. For example, now who wants can just fill up here and add a new action. In this README, you can find any information related to how to action are implemented and how you can implement any action. I want just to show you some of these. For example, this is just an action that try to open the etc shadow file. Each action, it's basically a Golang function, and the only thing that you have to do is to implement a simple interface for this function and register it. Okay. Yes. Nova wrote, should we start generating events for CDS? I think yes.
Also, can I elaborate on that a little bit? And if y'all, my brain is not working, so if I start ranting, just shut me up. So there's a tool called Sonaboy. Are y'all familiar with this? Basically what it did is it's an open source tool that we worked on at Heptio, and it took the Kubernetes end-to-end tests and basically turned them into a conformance suite. And if all of these assertions, if one of them was allowed to happen, we could effectively say this cluster is not what we would call conformant. So if it is easy and flexible using this event generator, it might be meaningful to just start writing small Go functions that will potentially exploit a CVE. And that way folks can just run this events generator in their cluster to see if they can generate safe events to see if they're vulnerable to known exploits as well. It's just kind of a checks and balances, right? So you want Falco running at runtime in case something unexpected happens, but then also it would be kind of needed to just go through and say, here's a list of 100 things that I know that I don't want to happen in my cluster. I'm going to try to make all of these 100 things happen and see what Falco has to say about it. Just a thought, if we want to start creating more different types of events, we could potentially use this in other ways. And I also added a link to the Kubernetes security announcement Google group. It's actually pretty hard to find that. Like, I don't think, like kind of by design, they don't want a lot of people going and looking at this thing. But if you're not subscribed to this, this is just a good way to get kind of up to the minute goings on in the Kubernetes security community as well. So just wanted to share a few of those.
Cool, very cool.
Thank you.
The last thing, if there is any volunteer to help with the event generator, I opened some issue. Just contribute if you want. Next topic, Loreleo, driver build grid on the way.
I have sorry, I have one more question on
Ah.
the event generator. So you
Okay,
you just showed, excuse me, the issue tracker. One of the issues is running the event generator in Kubernetes. How would we potentially be running the event generator? If it's doing malicious things, I imagine that it's going to want to be a fairly privileged container.
Yeah. The point is this: you can run the event generator in several ways. At the moment, you can run the event generator also in Kubernetes, but you have to build your container and so on. I think this is just another way to use the event generator that may be useful only for the Kubernetes audit.
Okay.
Not for everything, because of course, for some events you need to be sudo or a privileged container.
Yeah.
I have one more thing to say, Leo.
Tell me.
Now that we move the event generator into the Falco security organization, we should remove it from the Falco repository. And also about this Kubernetes deployment of the event generator, we should remove it from the Falco repository because it's inside the integrations directory. There's an example of running the Falco event, the old Falco event generator with Kubernetes. But maybe we will talk more about this integrations folder later in the call.
Yeah, we
point out
we
if
have
you want to take note
exactly.
to Falco.
Exactly. We have already an issue about moving the event generator, and I think in the issue there is everything related to, let me check it. Okay, we already have an issue opened about it.
Yeah,
Maybe we should also add some information about the.
just update it and link it in the document for now, so we can all remember.
Yeah.
Put
Okay.
the second bullet point, time to remove it from Falco repo. You can put it there if you want.
Okay. I'm just putting it here. I will fix it later. Okay. So the last thing, as I said, if there is any volunteer, please. Okay. Next point.
Okay.
Leo.
Basically, we completed today, this morning, we completed the DBG, Dark Builder Gang, Driver Builder Grid, which is the tool to automatically ship a set of pre-built kernel modules and the BPF probes for Falco. I'll share my screen maybe, so we can all look at it together. I need you, okay, now I can go. So where we are here, okay, let's. Here in the test infra repository, now there's this driver kit directory, and in reality there's a PR that's soon to be merged that implements basically this mechanism I was talking of. Basically, the mechanism is it's a make file and a bunch of driver kit configuration files like this, through which you can specify the kernel you want to build, the kernel module and or the BPF probes for, and the target of the kind of system you want to build for example, Debian, CentOS, and things like that. When you submit a PR towards the driver kit config subdirectory, driver kit config subdirectory, for example, here in the dev or in the other driver version, Circle CI will detect it and will start the process of building the kernel modules and the BPF probe if you requested it. And in the end, we'll publish them here on bin tray. My cookies are not working. driver, kernel module or a BPF probe. We will have the versions, 2 versions of the drivers that we are supporting, the dev one and the one that's inside the Falco CMake, for example, this one. And here there will be the files. The kernel modules are already compiled, pushed by our beloved bot Boyana for a preset of combinations of targets and kernel and things like that. What we still need to do is to update the Falco driver loader script, which behaves like entry point for Falco, specifically in the Docker images of Falco. Because it still goes to look for pre-built kernel modules to old sysdig repositories. Now it will be updated to look here for pre-built modules. And that's the highlight of the DBG. So I can stop my screen sharing.
I have sorry, this is me asking questions like always. I noticed for the Falco security JFrog account, it's Poyana, it's you, and it's Lorenzo. How do people get added to the JFrog account so that we can run?
Yeah, first time, Chris, you have to log into that with your GitHub account, signing with GitHub. Then we can add you to that account, or
Okay.
you, whatever is in the Falco Security GitHub organization. So it's driven by GitHub ownership.
Okay.
Okay. Next topic, package download highlights can be seen on Ventran, but we captured some snapshot here.
Go, Lore, show your wonderful file system. Leo, can you please open the RPM one, the last one?
Okay.
Well,
Oh.
we were scared this morning. I mean, this is impressive. This is last week, 8,000, more than 8,000.
8,000, more than 1,000.
Where can we get this graph from?
On Bintray, in the statistics tab.
After you've added my GitHub though, right?
Yep.
It's public.
Okay. All right,
It's
cool.
okay.
Talk.
Cool.
And
It's just that it takes a while to go there, so we put a screenshot because to view them all, it takes a bit of time.
Yeah, I'll keep on talk. Or
Perfect.
yeah, all's fine. Thanks.
I mean, I don't know who's downloading so many Falcos, but it's cool to see that there are a lot of downloads, especially for the RPM version, because also the other version I have some downloads, but not that amount, not that much. So
cool. Next topic, many users on Slack and
I
on
dropped the
GitHub
link
issue.
to the statistic page in the chat.
Okay. Please add it also in the HackMD if you want. Okay. Next point. Many users on Slack and on GitHub issues reported that the fix for the eBPF probe soft lock is working in their environment. Ready to release. Perfect. This is a very good news.
Yes, also there are some users reporting that fix also worked on CentOS, which ships 4.18, but we didn't see it on 4.18. It's probably something that Red Hat backported.
This was the one-liner in the driver code.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay.
Fucking one-liner.
And
I did that just for you, Lore.
And the last highlight, tomorrow, me and Chris will release the 0.22 of Falco. Chris, are you ready for tomorrow release? I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see what my fever looks
Okay.
like in the morning. Honestly, Grasso, at this point, if I need to just lay in bed and release Falco, I mean, we might as well.
No problem.
We can bring Dr. Tygones if that's the case.
My goal is to release Falco for my mobile.
Yeah. Actually, it could be possible just by using a tag on Git. Okay, we will see. Okay, and now we go through the agenda. First point, it's me, client Go. I wanted just to ask you if we are ready to release, I mean just tag the very first version of client Go. I made a PR just describing the release process. Basically, everything is automated. The only thing that we have to do manually is just the git tag. One note about versioning that we discussed with Leonardo is if we should pair the Go client version with the Falco version. In my opinion, no, we should not do that because Go client, it's only dependent on the Protos file.
So Leo and I were talking about the C API and writing flat buffers instead of protobuf files.
Yes, but this actually is, I think, another topic because it's not about how the gRPC API is implemented.
Mm-hmm.
This is just how to consume the gRPC API. And because all proto definition should be at least backward compatible, I think, in my opinion, that we shouldn't pair the two versions. So the Go client can have its own version.
I mean,
Leonardo,
I think once we get to the point where we have a versioned API for Falco and we're generating C headers and potentially other clients in different languages, I think we should keep them matched at that point, but I think that's very far off in the future.
yeah, I agree.
I mean, so we had to solve this in Kubernetes and we didn't really give it the time or the attention at the beginning that I think some of us would have liked. And that's where you see a lot of the problems with the mono repo, the problems with having older versions of client Go with newer versions of the Kubernetes API that are vendoring yet a third version of some other obscure package in the Kubernetes code base. And anytime you changed a function definition, the Go compiler would just, sorry, you're screwed until you fix this dependency problem. So I think just being aware is good for right now, but I agree that we're not there yet.
Yeah. Consider that at the moment, if we follow the semantic version, we are in the major version 0. That this basically means that anything may change at any time. So I think it's okay for now.
My favorite sim versioning scheme to use. Anything can change at any time.
Exactly.
YOLO.
But in general, I agree with you that when we will have the 1.0, maybe we should have a new strategy for this. I don't know if Leonardo wants to add something about this.
No, I'm tired
Okay.
of things.
Okay, no problem. So if nobody disagree, I would say yes to the question ready to release. It's okay?
Sounds good to me.
Go on.
Okay. Perfect. Next topic, Leo and Lore again.
Laura, it's your turn.
set of
So many
fixes
users
for
starts reporting errors with not available metadata for containers, like the container name or the container image and stuff. And we dug a bit and we discovered many unrelated problems, some of which are related to versions of gRPC, versions of libcurl, other libraries that are supposed to go there and take the information, and we fixed them. And another problem was that, and this is important for everyone that has Falco deployed somewhere, if you share anything into a container for the container runtime interface, you will not have to put in the path the /host prepend, because it's done by Falco itself. But this is already been updated in the documentation. And this was causing essentially the problem for some users, because they were sharing the, for example, varrun containerd sock, and they were using ghost varrun containerd sock to launch Falco with the cre parameter. But then Falco was prepending it itself internally in the code. So the thing that became was host varrun containerd sock instead of just host varrun containerd sock, which is kind of stupid, but the documentation fixes better than changing it for everyone else that is using it in the right way.
Should we add a log message here if we miss the socket again in the future?
Yes, we have been also thinking about sort of debug mode that just is more verbose, because there's a lot of logs that are there that are basically not enabled right now, because there's no way to enable them. So to debug this, what we actually did was to enable them, and then compiling Falco again. And I mean, just exposing those will be for everyone that has problems.
Okay. What logger are we using right now?
Falco sheet
Yeah,
log?
we're using Falco custom logger. The plan that Lorenzo was referring to was to basically, since the driver is using another log, we did some research in advance to find another logger, not our custom Falco logger, that's more performant than what we have, and that's able to also start the other logger, the logger of the driver. That way we could provide a flag for Falco to enable the debug mode, and for example, looking at the actual socket path use.
I guess what I'm getting at here is, do we have any other loggers in mind? And if not, do we want to port my Cubicorn logger over to C++ or C?
We have found a really good logger, which is called SPD log. It's a logger with thousands and thousands of stars already written in C++, very, very performant, probably the most performant out there. I looked briefly at the benchmarks, and the benchmarks looks impressive. And it has a lot of features that we need, like, for example, it's able to log after a period of time, log after, log with a ring buffer, things that we need. SPD log.
SPD.
SPD log.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Can we go to the next topic? Yeah, I think yes.
Yep. Oh, good. This one looks exciting.
Yeah. Actually, this is an old topic, but I want to open the discussion again. I open the issue. Basically, there is a big ongoing discussion about what we should officially support and what we should not support officially. And related to this, I noticed I think in the last few months that there are a lot of issue with the manifest files for Kubernetes that are inside the Falco repository that are, in my opinion, those files are creating some problem to the users because they are not updated so often, and also they are not specific to they don't refer to a specific Kubernetes version. For example, there is this pull request with a very long discussion about removing the deprecated Kubernetes API. And at the end, I think we agree that we can merge these, but then we need to have a discussion on how where to keep a manifest for old Kubernetes version.
Yep. My proposal about this, specifically for the Kubernetes integrations directory, is to merge those PR like they are, because Massimiliano, which by the way should be in the code, welcome Massimiliano, and thank you for submitting the PR.
Thank you.
We should merge those PR, but as soon as we merge, we need at the same time to come up with a plan to move these artifacts, these YAMLs file, because every time I see a YAML file in the Falco repository, my liver starts getting angry. In another repository that's community maintained. So my proposal would be to find someone that is willing to take care of those integrations file, not in the Falco repository, but in another repository, also in Falco Security Organization. No problem about that. This is my idea.
Okay, but when the files will be in another repository, we should still support them as the official way to install.
Community.
Yeah, this is important.
They are community maintained. I mean, we also have in Falco Security Organization other things like the Falco operator and other things, other repositories that are there, but they do not follow they are not official. I mean, they are maintained by external contributors, community, other people, but they are not officially. I mean, they are not, for me, official is only what we have bound to our release mechanism. So the 3 packages and the Docker images.
Can I do a screen share really quick?
Yes, sure.
Sorry, this
Go.
might take me a second to figure out.
No problem.
Okay. We all know how much I like to you pick on Kubernetes here. So whenever Kubernetes does a release, there's a few things that I wanted to call out. Number 1, you get a copy of the source code. Number 2, it's either zipped or it's just a gzipped tarball. And if you grab this tarball and you open it, you can go in here and you can see it's got the clients. So this is the corresponding client information. It's got cluster components. So this is all of the different various cluster components. And if you even come in to the change log for every release, this is where you grab the binaries. So if you wanted to grab the client for 32-bit Darwin Cubectl, here's the tarball, come in here, client, bin, bam, executable, statically linked, written in Go. So the point I'm trying to make is this is a bare minimal set of artifacts that a user could potentially download and consume. In fact, even if you look at how a lot of different cloud providers are setting up Kubernetes, there's some cloud providers who take the code and build it themselves. There's some who use there's like community-driven Kubernetes control plane container images that you can download and you can run. So if you want to run the control plane in a container, you can. But the point here is that the release team, by design, releases the static binaries and stops there. And so if you want to install the Kubernetes control plane using YAML, you are then tasked with creating that YAML yourself. That's like a personal project, or you can find somewhere else on the internet where somebody has created a project to try to assist you with that moving forward. So I think by design, when we look at Falco, especially if we look at falco.org, we allude to supporting a lot. If you come to installing Falco, you just look on the right side here, we have GKE, Minikube, daemon set, Helm, kernel module. We can even come down here and here's how to run it on CoreOS. And there's even more that's not even over here on the right side. There's also, I think, Chef and Puppet in here as well at the very bottom. But yeah, here's Puppet, here's Ansible. So we have a lot, and why this is a great resource for our community to offer here, because Falco is now more successful, we as maintainers potentially have created more work for us of just supporting what we allude to offering as a project. Then we actually can spend time fixing bugs, doing feature work, fixing the BPF concern, fixing the NA, fixing the build, doing all of these other things. So there's that whole long GitHub issue, but I will just on the call for like the sake of documentation here, I wanted to give this plenty of time for people to voice opinions about. But I think as a project, we should offer Debian packages, we should offer RPMs, probably Arch Linux would be the big 3 operating systems, install Falco as a systemd unit, and that's kind of the bare minimal, in the same way that Kubernetes offers the static binaries. And if we had written Falco in a language like Go, we probably would entertain the idea of releasing static binaries, but we just don't have that luxury like we do with the Go compiler. So anyway, I would like to open up a PR that cleans a lot of this up and ideally gets this install page down to kind of like maybe 10% of the size that it is now, where it's, here's how you install it on Ubuntu, here's how you install it on Cent, and here is a link to this repository that both Leos were just talking about, where as a community, yeah, we can have YAML files, we can have Helm charts, we can have all kinds of fun stuff that we can give people a starting point for, but that does not become part of what I would consider our version of an official release in the same way that Kubernetes has an official release. So any thoughts on that? Thumbs up, thumbs down, am I crazy? I mean, we all know I'm crazy, but
I guess my thought is, you know, I pretty much only use Kubernetes in a hosted environment where I'm using somebody's managed one.
yeah.
And so a Debian package doesn't, I mean, I could probably write some hacks.
Yeah.
But specifically the daemon set and the Helm chart that sets up the daemon set are like great entry points for me.
Is that how you're running Falco right now? Using the Helm chart?
Yeah.
Okay. And just, can you guys give us an idea of, I mean, did you install Falco once and then you didn't touch it again, or is this like a thing that you're repeating pretty regularly?
Yeah, I do a fair amount of like, I try to keep it working on most, like whenever there's a new release and stuff, I install it, or whenever I'm like playing with a new thing, I usually install it fresh.
Okay.
I think the key is less, I mean, I'm happy to dance to whatever the tune is. I just wonder what the story is for people who have managed Kubernetes where they don't have as much access to the nodes.
Yeah.
Chris, in your plan, you are considering that we also keep the Docker images, right?
Yeah, I definitely think we should have the Docker images. And I'm definitely open to the idea of supporting the Helm chart. whatever it is we as a community decide to support, I just want to make sure that we're clear about it, and that if we are going to support a Helm chart, like, do we want to advertise that running a privileged container where we're mounting the Docker socket is a good idea for a security tool? I mean, there's just things here we should be considering in my mind.
I think that everyone should consider the first option on having Falco as a process in their host directly. I think that we should leave the Helm chart where it is and let the community handle it, like the Helm community, or you know, someone here that just want to contribute to it, or someone that uses it, or if someone, you know, join us as a community member and says, hey, I want to, you know, work on the Helm chart, we are not gonna stop him. Sorry for my children noising in the background. And but since we still keep the Docker images, we effectively give away to everyone that wants to deploy in Kubernetes, or everyone that wants to deploy with the Helm chart, a possibility to do it if they write their own manifests. So I think we should remove the documentation for it, honestly, and let people, you know, use it in that way, but that's not the supported way.
So, I mean, like, I think, like, let's go back to Kubernetes, right? So here in the Kubernetes repo is the source code for all the components that you would potentially need to build and install to create a Kubernetes cluster. Like, if you ran Kelsey's Kubernetes the hard way, you could find most of what you needed in this repo. Contrary-wise, there's another common install tool called kops, which is kops an official way of installing Kubernetes, or is this just a successful project because the scope of Kubernetes was so limited? And again, like, if we want to go Helm charts, we totally can. I just think we need to be we're at the point as a project where we need to be very clear about where our scope is. And if there is another tool that takes off in the same way that tools like kops and KubeSpray have taken off for installing Kubernetes, we can bring them into the community, we can let them grow, and we can usher them as needed. But again, the last thing we want to do is create friction for folks like Spencer if they're doing this regularly and they've already created a dependency on using something like Helm.
Yeah, and I mean, I like I said, if the play is you install Falco for real as part of your control plane buildup, I think that's reasonable. I totally get it. I totally understand the idea of like minimizing the surface area that's supported so that maintainers don't burn out and we don't have people just staring at Ansible charts. Like, I don't know how this works.
Yeah.
Spencer, I have a question for you. In the managed container environments where you run this policy, how do you install stuff if you cannot run a daemon set? I mean, you have a package manager.
We totally can run a daemon set. We just, I mean, I would have to, go ahead.
I mean, if you don't use Kubernetes to, you know, run stuff on your servers, you can use systemd, you can use a package manager. What do you have there?
Right. So I use the IBM Cloud Managed Kubernetes Service, which is a little different than like EKS. It's more like GKE, I think, although I haven't used GKE very much, where you just like press a button and they give you an API where you have a fully fledged Kubernetes API, which is running somewhere on their control plane. And then it kind of behind the scenes creates 3 virtual machines in your account. And those are the nodes. And so when I want to, and I never SSH into those nodes, I never do anything with those nodes other than, you know, look at their RAM utilization in some dashboard tool somewhere, right? So when I want to install Falco, what I do is I run either the daemon set installer or the Helm chart that will go in and sort of run a privileged container and either compile or install the kernel module there. That's what I do.
What this looks like to me, this looks like just, you know, to so that everyone understands what you're talking about. The thing that Falco is doing now when you run it as a daemon set or as deployment or whatever is that it actually gets privileges, actually gets, you know, the host directories for the machine because it has to install something persistent, which is the kernel module or the BPF probe. So effectively, in my opinion, for us it could be the same if we provide everyone, you know, a Kubernetes job that runs on every machine and installs Falco via package manager. If that's
that's
what
honestly,
you want to
if
provide.
we go full, and I'm not saying, I don't necessarily mean to be the stick in the mud here, folks. I'm just bringing my use case, right?
Yeah,
No, I
that's-
just
that's-
want, yeah, that's what I want to
Honestly,
understand.
if we went full like Debian packages and stuff, I would end up writing that job or something that SSHs into the nodes, like probably by hook or crook, you know, kind of
Exactly. You
sneaks
want
its
to
way into the
understand-
nodes and does some admin, and then
I want to understand your use case. That's why I'm talking, because the use case that you have is that you are very familiar. I mean, I'm not saying that you're not familiar with SSH. I'm saying that your main entry point for your computing is the kubectl. So ideally, what you want to do, or the Kubernetes API. So ideally, what you want to do is to be able to use the Kubernetes API to install Falco too, as you do with whatever else software. What I think is that we should provide a way to let those that only have the Kubernetes API or that cannot use any other automation to install Falco using our desired installation medium using the Kubernetes API. In this case, use the Kubernetes API to enter the machines and install the Falco package.
yeah, like a privileged container that then goes into the standard apt or whatever base
this way we achieve
system D
things.
unit that Chris was talking about.
Yeah.
In this way, we achieve two things. Falco is not a privileged container. I mean, it starts, it's a system D unit or whatever, but then it's not in the Kubernetes installation anymore. So that, because the problem that Chris was highlighting when we were talking with this is that Falco is used to secure Kubernetes. And if the Kubernetes control plane goes down, Falco is useless. So the problem is also, a technical problem. We could write more advanced features if we stop having Falco inside Kubernetes for Kubernetes environments. So it's
Can I?
it's also that.
Can I take a stab
And I
at?
think that.
Sorry, can y'all hear me?
What
Yeah.
is
Yes.
a step, please?
Yep. Can I take a
I'm
stab
Italian. What
at
is a
just
step?
making kind of a generalization here? So
Please.
it sounds like, Spencer, your use case basically says the technical constraint here is that given a Kubernetes cluster with only access to the Kubernetes API, you would like a way to install, update, and otherwise manage Falco only using the Kubernetes API. And that is a constraint that we should, as a community, support. Yeah?
That's my reality.
Okay, then yeah, I mean, I think then we should, if that's your reality, then that's reality, right? Then we should
But-
figure out a way to do it.
Again, I don't mean to stand in the way of the river. So
Well, I mean, my thought here is, if that's your reality, it's probably going to be the reality for other folks as well. And
yeah, I
so-
think that's certainly the reality for IBM Cloud customers. I don't know if that's too many people, to be honest. Also, I wonder about GKE. Like, I feel like that's pretty close to GKE. I don't think GKE gives you a ton of access to the nodes unless
I
you
mean,
do
you
something.
you can SSH into them, and that's about it.
That's better than we do.
Yeah. But even then, the operating system that GKE comes with, like, that's an entire other bucket of worms, right? And that's, inspiration for the BPF probe in the first place, because loading a kernel module wasn't a thing that they were going to let us do. So I think we're always going to be living in a world with managed Kubernetes where there's going to be technical constraints we're going to have to work around. I think this just goes back to we should have a set of, this is what we support, and if you would like to install Falco only using the Kubernetes API, here's your starting point, and let the community kind of go from there. And if we notice that something is getting more or less traction, we can always adjust as needed.
Cool.
Okay.
And I'll throw my hat in the ring. I'm happy to help maintain some, the job we were talking about, Lorenzo, or part of the Helm chart, the Helm chart and stuff, I'm happy to step into a maintenance role on that. I know I haven't slung in a lot of code in the last couple of months, but I'm happy to do it.
Honestly, what I think could be the outcome of this could be something in Falco CTL, because it already connects to Kubernetes.
Yes.
So you say,
Exactly.
Falco CTL, go install Falco in this Kubernetes cluster, or tell me which Falco version I run, tell me if there are updates or something. And we can even avoid using packages. We can tell Falco CTL to download the tar so that you don't have to figure out if it's a Debian, if it's a RPM or whatever. And at that point, since we already have the context of the machine, we can also go install the driver or the BPF probe right that moment. Of course, this means that if you add a node to the cluster, it's not added automatically, but that's not on this community to think about it. It's on, you have your cluster, when you add a node, you also run Falco CTL install of that node. I think this should be the outcome.
And I want to add one thing.
QCTL something, if you don't like QCTL something, SSH in. That could be. This is just an hypothesis.
I just want to add one thing, that if we have this feature on Falco CTL, and also if we let the community support just the Helm chart, we should completely remove the manifest files from our repository, because if we still maintain somewhere those files, this means that we are in some way supporting the privileged container with the old method to install.
Yes, we should remove them at that point. Also, because one of the problems, as a maintainer, when someone opens an issue, you have to figure out where they are running and was the installation medium. If the only installation medium possible are the RPM and deb packages and the tar, if it's installed by Falco CTL or whatever, it's not a problem, because I can debug the Falco problem after the installation, and that's one thing. And I can debug the installation method. But if, when it's running a daemon set, Falco is behaving essentially in a completely different way. If you look at the code, there are many, many exceptions. There are a lot of things that change when you enable, like the host root environment variable was mind-blowing. It does many, many things. I think that running Falco on the host is probably the best.
I think that we all agree on removing the integrations from the Falco repository. Integration directory. The only thing that we should maybe understand if we want to completely remove them or give them to the communities to, for example, Massimiliano that did the PR, maybe he wants to keep them and in his GitHub or somewhere else, just that.
I think we just moved them to a third party's repo, and we just label that as legacy, third party, unofficial, community supported, however we want to label it. And that becomes more of an archive, that it's there if folks want a starting point. We're not going to just completely get rid of it, but it no longer is part of
the official method. Like I said, it's not something that
totally.
Take care when we release Falco. Or we don't take care of it if Kubernetes release another version. We don't go there updating it like Falco maintainers. If someone from the community wants to help us in doing that, keeping them in siege, but it's very worked out. That's
from a documentation point of view and from a supporting staff point of view, I think that by removing all the stuff from the website and everything gives us more space to add documentation around important things, like what are the fields with the support, how the rules work, these kind of things. Because we have a lot of documentation on how to integrate Falco with things, but not a lot of documentation on how to use Falco itself, on how to take the best out of Falco itself.
Yeah.
And I think this is what Istio did, right? Like if you look at the old Istio website, it was like install it on Cloud Foundry, install it on Kubernetes, install it on bare Linux hosts, and now all that's forgotten. And it's like if you're not putting Istio on Kubernetes, that's the only thing it's for. So I think getting clear about where you put it and how it goes, what you should do, is very reasonable.
Okay.
Because it's important
Okay.
that we all acknowledge that Kubernetes is probably the, we want to be on, securing Kubernetes cluster. That's, 100% our goal. But we have to define the best installation medium. And the message, we should be very precise with the message. We should be very clear that by removing the stuff, that's not that we don't want to, secure Kubernetes
That does
anymore.
not mean you can't install Falco on Kubernetes.
Exactly.
That's not officially one thing. Just that.
Okay.
So
Oh.
I have just a quick question here.
Okay, I think we have just a few minutes left, but go on.
Okay. I think this will be a quick question. So given the constraint that it sounds like we want to agree to support Kubernetes, the constraint of using the Kubernetes API as our only avenue in which to install Falco, it looks like our options are mutating YAML, SSHing into a node, baking something into Falco CTL, which is basically going to be remote command injection over SSH and scopy, some sort of, which is basically
Falco
what we did.
CTL is connecting to the API and executing and installing Falco. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
You're right.
And this is what we did with Cubicorn.
Now that I think about it, you're right.
This is exactly what we did with Cubicorn. Was we literally wrote an SSH package, and we had bootstrap scripts, and you could run them, and it would spin up a server and go execute the scripts. And if everything worked well, then you would have a Kubernetes cluster.
Now that you say that in that way, it doesn't look very, very good anymore.
And then the fourth option, of course, is Helm chart. Spencer, do you have any technical thoughts, or would there be any of these that would be like the least invasive for you?
I don't know. I from a technical perspective, I feel like I'm the boat anchor on this call, to be honest. But right now we have a dirty hack where we launch a container that a bind mounts in the systemd socket.
Yeah.
And it restarts SSH on the node so that you can SSH into the node. And we do that all the time for various maintenance tasks. So I don't think you can scare me.
Okay.
I mean, I think we'll be comfortable with whatever. And we can iterate, right? Like a thing is better than, almost be better to have a thing we're sort of banging on and iterating forward and finding the sharp edges of than spending too much time.
Okay.
Also,
So-
this looks this looks better to me than running a privileged container anyways.
Well, running a privileged
Okay.
container for a few seconds to do some maintenance and then turning it off and running a regular container that's just talking to the Falco socket, I think
Also,
is
because
quickly
while
better.
you do that, Falco will continuously alert about the stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we came up with a decision together. We will, let me see if I understood correctly. Only for the topic of that PR that Massimiliano opened, we merge that and then we remove those files from the Falco main repository. Massimiliano, are you in? Are you here?
Yes, I'm here again.
Do you want to take care of those files?
I like, but I don't know how much I can maintain updated with the I don't know, Kubernetes release cycle and at the same time the Falco release cycle.
Okay.
And one important point.
Tell me more. Important point.
One important point that I think is if you separate the manifest configuration from the main Falco repository, that I agree. Is also important that, in my opinion, that the repository as it is maintained by Falco security, it shouldn't also be in the Falco security group, but I don't know, community, because otherwise, as a third-party customer, I know I could think that Falco Security can and maintains frequently also the manifest.
Personally, I have no problem moving it outside of Falco Security because I mean the other choice is just to remove that. I mean, we all agree on not having those files in the Falco Security repository. It seems to me. So the other option, we have two options: remove it.
I think we should just remove it, and if
Oh,
anyone wants to mirror it, they are free to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
If you want to remove it, let's remove it. If you want to keep it, let's keep it. Let's or maybe we want to remove it in a few months, and we put a notice in the integration folder with written, we are gonna remove this.
So
I
I
agree
mean,
with that.
we have
So-
to move other things to a different place anyway. So I vote we create that community repo now, and we can just start archiving things in that as needed, and then we can cross this bridge later based on what people are saying and how much noise they're making about it. But I mean, we can move the YAML, we can move some of the old Docker files, we can move some of the examples, a lot, the chef, the puppet, the Ansible, we can get all of that into this new community third-party.
I will call it
documentation.
contrib,
Perfect, yeah.
which is very popular as a name in for things that are out of the scope of the community, but people poke around.
And there's no hard requirement of no time requirement, hard requirement of keeping things updated, so that if Massimiliano can't for a version of Kubernetes update it, it's not a problem. I mean, it's contrib.
Exactly.
When Massimiliano can, it will update them.
Okay. And so it sounds like then for the install story for Spencer's use case here, still kind of up in the air, but something along the lines of some command line tool that will only use the Kubernetes API, gain access to the root system, apt-get, yum install, whatever, get the Falco daemon set up with systemd, and then exit. It's a completed pod at that point, just like the way Spark executors work. And we're done. And if you want to get the Falco logs, that's now an exercise of getting logs off the host system or writing a small pod that just connects to the Falco output server and then just echoes to standard out or something.
Exactly. And also it's in the scope of Falco CTL, because Falco CTL is,
Yes.
for Falco automation and, to configure Falco and those kind of things.
And if Kubernetes is completely bombed, which I'll probably intentionally break a Kubernetes cluster maybe once a week, that systemd daemon is still running recording events.
Exactly.
We have that
Sweet.
sense of checks and balances with Kubernetes and Falco.
Thanks everyone
Yes.
for letting me slide a use case in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
And also I think that there will be many users that are gonna do this in other ways. Like they're gonna install it with APT, they're gonna install with Cloud Init or something else. Falco CTL is the option that we support for Kubernetes. But if you
I agree on that. So at the end, do we agree on move all unsupported stuff to a contrib repo?
yes.
Who's going to be in charge of making the repo? Because I can start opening up PRs as I open up my
That was the
documentation.
reason that I asked to Max if since he already opened a PR taking care of it, if he wants to join the Falco Security Organization for that repo and taking care of it when he can.
Okay.
Max?
Yeah, I can try. Yes, I'd be not honored.
Thanks, Max.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks, Max. Okay, we have maybe
I have a
no
point
time,
in the agenda, but
Lorenzo has a point, so
it's going to be very quick. I wanted to propose in the near future that we do an experimentation to add a profiler to Falco, not a generic profiler, but using the pproof format to profile Falco internals, not C++ code, Falco internals. What I mean is that ideally we want to be able to extract a pproof from Falco, where you can see how much time it took to get something from the web server and then process it with the Falco engine and then spit out with the outputs and then how much time all the rules took, what was their order, these kind of things. And ideally, be able to open it with profiler.firefox.com or any other visualizer for profilers that can show us, how Falco is behaving. This is a preamble for the work that we're going to do for the input API libraries and all these kind of things, so that we have a way to compare Falco legacy with the new Falcos that are going to happen in the next few months. I think we want to do this experiment, but this is my opinion. Let me know what you think. And
I personally agree on that, and also I want to add that the profiler output can be used to test events together with the event generator, because it's a way to check exactly the output of Falco, and so we can do test automation with it.
Yeah, we can turn the profiler and the event generator into a test suite.
Yes.
Exactly.
We can do with that. We can do behavioral driven development, basically behavioral testing, and benchmarks for the upcoming CPI.
Cool.
I mean, with this kind of thing, we will spot things like the NA values in 0 time, the next releases, which is, kind of what we are here for.
Perfect. Do we have any questions?
Thanks
No?
for letting us go over
No,
today.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Just the last thing, any volunteer for the next call?
Let's put me down, but if 7
Okay.
days, hopefully my fever will be okay, but like we're all gonna take this one day at a time.
Leo, stop hiding.
You could put me as a backup if Chris is still not feeling well.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I feel like we have our calls pretty much down to a science that we all kind of just talk anyway. So, all right.
Okay, I think we have done everything. Thank you to
Does
everyone.
everyone like myself over there?
Thank
Thank
you,
you
everyone.
to everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.